U.S. president, who was also a licensed bartender. He was co-owner of Berry and Lincoln, a saloon in Springfield, Illinois. 2. The only president to be unanimously elected was George Washington. He also refused to accept his presidential salary, which was $25,000 a year. 3. Because the KKK was a powerful political force, Truman was encouraged to join the organization. According to some accounts, he was inducted, though he was never active. Other accounts claim that he gave the KKK a $10 membership fee, demanded it back, and was never inducted or initiated. 4. Grover Cleveland was the only president in history to hold the job of a hangman. He was once the sheriff of Erie County, New York, and twice had to spring the trap at a hanging. 5. The S in Harry S. Truman doesn't stand for anything. Therefore, there is no period after his middle initial. 6. Lincoln logs are named after Abraham Lincoln and the log cabin where he was born. John Lloyd Wright, son of famous architect Francis Lloyd Wright, invented them. 7. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams once traveled to Stratford-upon-Avon to visit Shakespeare's birthplace. While there, they took a knife to one of Shakespeare's chairs so they could take home some wood chips as souvenirs. 8. James Madison and Thomas Jefferson were once arrested together for taking a carriage ride into the countryside of Vermont on a Sunday, which violated the laws of that state. 9. Andrew Johnson is the only tailor ever to be president. As president, he would typically stop by a tailor shop to say hello. He would only wear suits that he made himself. 10. Teddy bears were so named when Theodore Teddy Roosevelt refused to shoot a small bear cub one day. The incident was reported in the news, which inspired a toy manufacturer to come out with the cute stuffed animals. 11. George Washington never lived in the White House. The Capitol was actually located in Philadelphia and other cities when Washington was president. He is also the only president who didn't represent a political party. 12. James Abram Garfield is the first president to ever talk on the phone. When he spoke to Alexander Graham Bell, who was at the other end 13 miles away, he said, "Please speak a little more slowly." 13. 29th President Warren Gamaliel Harding repeatedly made love to a young girl named Britain in a White House closet. On one occasion, Secret Service agents had to stop his wife from beating down the closet door. 14. Thomas Jefferson was the first president to be inaugurated in Washington, D.C. 15. After President Bush Sr. vomited on Japanese Prime Minister, a new word entered the Japanese language, Bushusuru, which means to do the Bush thing or to publicly vomit. 16. The OK derives from President Martin Van Buren, who was known as Old Kinderhook because he was raised in Kinderhook, New York. OK clubs were created to support Van Buren's campaigns. 17. President Grover Cleveland is the only president to be elected to two non-consecutive terms. He was the 22nd and 24th president. 18. John Fitzgerald Kennedy's famous inaugural line, "Ask not what you President Warren G. Harding, who told the 1916 Republican Convention, "We must have a citizenship less concerned about what the government can do for it and more anxious about what it can do for the nation." 19. Martin Van Buren was the first to be a United States citizen. Okay, I'm sure that meant first president. All previous presidents were born British subjects. 20. 6 presidents were named James: Madison, Monroe, Polk, Buchanan, Garfield, and Carter. 21. President Dwight David Eisenhower was the only president to serve in both World War I and World War II. 22. Richard Milhous Nixon was the first president to visit all 50 states and the first to visit China. He is the only president to resign. 23. James Earl Jimmy Carter was the first president to be born in a hospital. Whoa. Wow. 24. Jimmy Carter is the first known president to go on record as seeing a UFO. 25. George Herbert Walker Bush was the first serving vice president to be elected president since Martin Van Buren. 26. William Jefferson Bill Clinton was the first Democratic president to win re-election since FDR. 27. Abraham Lincoln was the only presidential candidate who was not a Mason in the 1860 election. 28. President James Buchanan was quietly but consistently bought slaves in Washington, D.C. and then set them free in Pennsylvania. 29. Herbert Clark Hoover gave his White House servants strict orders to hide from him whenever he passed by. Those who failed to do so were at risk of being fired. What? 30. Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, affectionately called the many women he slept with his harem. He even had a buzzer system installed that rang inside the Oval Office so that the Secret Service could warn him when his wife was coming. 31. James Buchanan is the only Bachelor president. He was virtually inseparable from William R. King, a senator from Alabama, earning the pair the nickname Miss Nancy and Aunt Fancy, and Mr. Buchanan and his wife. 32. Ulysses S. Grant, born Hiram Ulysses Grant, smoked at least 20 cigars a day, and after a brilliant war victory, a nation of well-wishers